You're muted.
Today, Ozy Media. Kaboom, and we hardly knew ya.
Then Blue Origin, a whistleblower says the rocket company is not safe.
And quantum computing, how it could change everything.
I'm Stephen Rosenbaum, and this is Future Forward.
And I'm Alexa Scordato. Let's launch.
Hey, Alexa.
Hey, Steve. Happy Sunday.
You know, I should warn you, my computer is doing something weird where about every 3 or 4 minutes it beeps that it's finding something, and then it seems to cut me off. So if I go away, I'll be right back. I'll just scramble right back.
Technology for you.
So at the risk of throwing a curveball at you, I think we ought to flip the order of this conversation around, and we ought to just start with Ozy.
Yeah, this is the story this week that blew my mind, and I could not wait to talk to you about this.
So what about it surprised you?
I mean, I think it always surprises me when you get like very important people, like a lot of them, and they're kind of, you just assume that, you know, their decisions and clearances and hurdles and like things just get to a point where they go down so far and no one kind of catches it.
So, you know, I have a little bit of sympathy for Ozy Media, only in that, you know, back in the day when we were running a consumer facing web company, you know, everything gets measured on traffic. And traffic is, there's a line between being able to buy it and be like, if you buy an ad and you pay for the ad and the ad gets a click, that's audience. If you spend money on a server farm of fake robots that click on your website, that's fraud. In between those two things, it's really blurry. And, you know, which is not to say what they did was right. And I should say, I don't know the Ozy guys from the inside. I did go to Ozy Fest 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 now, in Central Park. It was a happening. There were people there. People bought tickets.
I mean, I applaud Ozy for the vision it had. I think it was trying to fill a gap, right? It was to basically engage a younger, more diverse audiences and on conversations that matter.
Yeah,
political conversations, hard conversations.
So back in the day, you know, before Cory Booker was Senator Booker, he had Waywire, which was a similarly strategic web-based conversation platform for young people about politics and news. When he ran for senator, he put it up for sale. I bought it. We pivoted to a much broader focus away from young people in politics, not because I didn't want to do young people in politics, I did, but because I thought it was impossible.
And you still think it's really hard?
No, I think it's impossible.
Yeah.
I don't think young people consume packaged media in the way that middle-aged media makers like the Ozy folks, because that's really what they are. You know, they you know, he comes from MSNBC and he wants to make shows that young people will watch. And you know, as you know from the numbers at TikTok, people consume much more diverse media that they make and share and comment on in a very different, less formulaic way than I think in hindsight, either Cory Booker or the Waywire 2.0 product or Ozy wanted to make it. I just don't think it works.
Right. So this Bloomberg article highlights sort of one controversial facet of Ozy, which is that they bought web traffic and they didn't pay it.
Yeah. So yeah, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not there's an investigation and there are charges. But like the fact that they were on the phone with an investor and they had someone impersonating a YouTube executive talking about how great YouTube felt about Ozy. I mean,
that was the first thing I read last Sunday. Ben Smith was an article published in the New York Times. And as I was reading this article, I was just, again, kind of blown away that one, it was attempted. Two, I mean, there were lots of guests that were booked on that show. Like a lot of people just bought into it. And
you're talking about the show that's claimed to be on A&E, but was in fact not on.
Yeah. And then it was they said they were going to put it on YouTube Originals, but it wasn't considered a YouTube original. There was no deal with YouTube. They just put it on YouTube. And then there's speculation that they were buying video ads, because if you look at the playlist, some videos have like millions of views, some have like a few hundred. And that's usually like a sign that there was some paid media put against it.
And no comments, no discussion.
Right. And so I think it's just, you had like a team of experienced journalists, producers, like industry veterans who are all part of this thing. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be surprised at this point, because if you look at, I don't know, WeWork as an example, right? A lot of people want to believe that these kinds of things are possible. And that's the leap of faith you take working at a startup.
Or what's her face, the blood testing company?
Theranos. Theranos, yeah. And Elizabeth Holmes. Like, yeah. I mean, again, as someone who has built a career of working in startups, I love to believe that hard things are possible. I'm drawn to charismatic founders. I like challenging markets. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know.
So the Valley ethos is fake it till you make it. And the problem is, what happens when you fake it and then you fake it some more and then you fake it like lying.
That's
and then
what
you
I
fake
mean.
It like,
there were just so many rounds of that.
Fake it till you hit the wall. And then, I mean, to be clear, none of these investors were spending, the rent money on, it's, $1 million here, $1 million there. They'll all, the question is, where is the line between creating momentum and creating a fiction? And
right. Wasn't this the phrase in the Steve Jobs biography, reality distortion field? You can have that to a certain extent, but you have to then like back it up.
I have to say, speaking of Steve Jobs, I'm listening to the Peter Kafka Land of the Giants season 3, which is about Apple, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great storyteller. You could really get caught in the weeds, and he doesn't. But it's the Jobs story right up to iPhone, and it's really good. It's really good. Highly recommend.
I'll add it to the list. So this story broke on Sunday, and then there are like a bunch of people, like it was like an exodus, right? The chairman resigned. He's like part owner of the Milwaukee Bucks. And then by Thursday or Friday, the board basically said like, shut it down. And so Ozy Media will cease to exist.
Or did it ever exist?
I mean, it did, in sense there was a payroll, there was like a legit corporate entity, and the fact that it's being disbanded officially,
I guess my question is, are there 1 million people in America that will wake up tomorrow morning and go, wait, Ozy's not on? Or is it 500,000 or is it 7?
Right. I actually think the only people who are really thinking about it, as no longer existing are the employees.
I think are the employees. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel bad for them, like very, very bad for them.
Although highly employable, digital media, growing space, it's not like they're a newspaper. If they worked at a local newspaper and they wanted to work at another local newspaper, they might be finding themselves in a tough spot. Speaking of which, brief plug, the swag came. So here's the NYC Media Lab swag. We got all kinds of cool stuff.
Wait, what does that say on it?
What the name of this year's event is Future Imperfect.
Future Imperfect. Cool.
And
say more about that theme.
So it was May and then early June, and we were planning an October conference, and there were all kinds of questions. Will we be in person? We don't know. What will be going on with politics? We don't know. What's going on with the environment? And we're like, you know what? We don't want to be saying the world is ending, because we're an optimistic bunch and we believe technology is a really powerful force for good. But we also don't want to be techno-utopian, like, yay, tech will fix everything. And we're like, and we spent days on getting the word right, and then we settled on future as in leaning forward, and imperfect as in complicated. And we have two keynotes, both of which are spectacular and timely. Tomorrow, Wednesday morning, we have Laura Edelman, who was the NYU doctoral student who, along with a partner, was running the ad observatory and got shut down by Facebook for doing basic research into how political ads run on the Facebook platform. And she's very
but she has a lot to say.
Yeah, she has a lot to say. She's very, very smart. And then Greg Brockman, who is the co-founder and CEO and chairman of OpenAI, is 3:00 on Wednesday. And he does very few public events. He's pretty private guy, and AI is front and center in a lot of the things we're talking about. So
exciting.
It's a day-long event.
All virtual again this year.
All virtual again, second year. And we got water bottles this year. So.
Water bottles and swag. I mean, what more could you want?
That's right. All right, let's move on and talk about space, shall we?
Okay.
So do there's this shouting match going on between all of the space entrepreneurs.
Which for me is a little bit ridiculous, because SpaceX and Elon Musk, they're so ahead of the competition. I just feel like Jeff Bezos is like poking the bear. And Richard Branson, I don't even know if I could take seriously.
So I said among friends back when both of those, when the Bezos and the Branson flights went up, I said, really? I mean, is this a thing? Like, are they really astronauts, or aren't they just flying in an airplane that's kind of way at the edge of airplane land? And I got yelled at by my friend. No, they're astronauts. But, I don't know if you remember this, but I did the zero gravity plane.
Yeah.
I flew it. And so, I'm not going to lie, zero gravity, very cool, highly recommend. But you're right. I mean, what Musk is doing is real rocket ships.
I'm not saying that like sending people into a zero gravity or like outer edges of the atmosphere are like trivial things. Like it takes real engineering to make that happen. But relative to the progress that SpaceX has made, like there's a reason that they have the government contracts. And for me, it's a little bit absurd that Jeff Bezos is suing SpaceX to sort of be like, hey, like we want skin in the game too, and competition is good. And it's just, I think it's just funny and a little bit ironic to see Jeff Bezos kind of grasping at straws, because he's so not comfortable operating on his back foot, right? He's so used to being dominant and number one, and for him to then enter an industry where there's a real competitor that he needs to catch up with. It's the dynamic is interesting.
I agree. I vote for Elon all day long.
Yeah, this isn't like airplanes where it's like, oh, am I going to take JetBlue, United, American, whatever. It's like, no. It's like, I'm going to go into space. I only want one rocket, and it's going to be the SpaceX flight.
So I read over the summer. I read the Musk biography, not autobiography, but the biography, and the discussion about the quality of the engineering they're doing uh, is very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but back to this battle for a second. I mean, there's also a complaint that Blue Origin is not safe.
It's a
And
whistleblower who
yeah,
came out
yeah,
with this. It was 21 employees, past, present, who said that um, basically it's not really viable.
which is scary. I
Yes.
mean,
Also, isn't it interesting that we live in a world now that it's so commonplace for employees to basically just dish the dirt on their employer?
well, tune into 60 Minutes tonight, Sunday night. There's a whistleblower that's going to tell all about what's going on at Facebook.
Like the Wall Street Journal Facebook files, but like the source?
Yeah, actually, and it's a woman, and they're going to reveal her name tonight, and she's basically like, base. She claims that Facebook released controls over some of their political conversations too soon, and that's what caused January 6th to happen.
Wow, 60
Yeah,
Minutes tonight. Okay.
yeah. All right, so we have a few minutes. We have like 10 minutes left. Let's switch to something more optimistic.
Okay.
Because there's only so much Facebook and hoo-ha you can do. Let's talk for a few minutes
Corporate controversy.
about quantum computing.
Okay.
So there are two articles that we pulled up. One that said this is Quantum Magazine, which says major quantum computing strategy suffers serious setbacks. And I read that and was concerned because, there's an enormous amount going on in the quantum computing space that isn't like tip of the tongue interesting, but in fact, I think is really the next. I mean, it's an argument about whether or not quantum computing is more interesting than artificial intelligence, or whether or not they're in fact hinged together.
Yep.
But then I also found this Fast Company article, which was, and this is recent. This is from a couple of days ago. IBM CEO: quantum computing will take off like a rocket ship this decade. Well, decade's a long time, okay, but IBM is no longer the kind of company that people talk about. It's funny, like they're just as big and just as powerful. Microsoft the same way, but not as much kind of in the spotlight of drama as Facebook, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you think of the Fast Company article? Like, did you buy the argument that quantum computing is that close?
It's so funny. It's like because I only read what I kind of know about it, and it's hard to grasp like what is the day-to-day application. Like I guess it's all relative, right? Like what are they close in terms of their theories they can prove consistently, or are we close in terms of, okay, the era of quantum computing is here, and here are the 10 ways this is now going to revolutionize me and my world in the next 2 years?
So here's why I'm willing to bet on quantum computing as the next big thing. If you look at how much of what you and I do on a daily basis that is now web-based, you can feel it's kind of clunky. Like, I don't know, you try and get a prescription filled at CVS, and sometimes they text you, and sometimes they email you, and sometimes you get smoke signals, and like there's all this technology that's kind of like hinged together, but not in a very seamless, sophisticated way. And you could feel how once the data, and sometimes CVS will send me a text and say, hey, your medication needs to be renewed. And then sometimes they won't.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing feels like it's yet got enough compute power behind it to be both smart and consistent.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, okay, here's a little bit of my skepticism or where I get scared. Is in order for quantum computing technology to be effective, it needs large, vast amounts of data. And the centralization of that is a little bit scary for me.
Oh, come on. You gave up on that fear 5 years ago.
No, I guess it's just I have yet to see an organization or a company that is responsible enough to handle the data responsibly. Like, again, in the last 2 years, we've just been
Yeah.
through the ringer.
So there's a new David Eggers book coming out. He wrote The Circle, and his new book is, I think, depending on who you believe, it's either coming out like this week or in 2 weeks. I can't get a straight answer out of anybody, but it's essentially the story of the future in which Google and Amazon merge. And
I
to your
mean,
point,
yeah.
everything they need to know about you, from your shoe size to where you vacation to what flavor ice cream you buy
Mm-hmm.
to how much ice cream you buy.
Look, for me, it's like I don't have a personal fear necessarily for like my data. Meaning, like I have nothing to hide, right? Like if my web search history and healthcare records and taxes were like leaked publicly tomorrow, like I'd be uncomfortable with the general like, ooh, like people just know these things about me, but like it's not the end of the world. What I care more about is, obviously Facebook being an example of like they hoard a ton of consumer data, and the influence they've been able to wield is net negative, and you could say that like, okay, Amazon, from an e-commerce standpoint, is also going unchallenged. And while I benefit as a consumer, like what are the consequences that we're not even necessarily aware of? Like, are we actually shipping so much stuff that we're actually accelerating, you know, climate change?
All
Yes,
right.
right?
So here's my paranoid sci-fi version of this. So you get a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, and you set as a goal that you want to lose 10 pounds. And you're walking down the street, and you pause for a moment outside a pizza shop, and your Apple Watch says, "Hey, Steve, based on your health goals, if you walk another half block, there's a salad place that would probably be better for you." Now, on one hand, that's all helpful. I probably shouldn't have pizza. I probably should have salad. And I did set the goal. But like, at what point does that flip around and become, hey, we want to let you know that we're raising your insurance prices on your healthcare insurance because we noticed you bought a surfboard. And based on your age and the fact that you've never been surfing before, data, our risk table says you're probably going to hurt yourself.
Right.
By the way, all like none of this is far fetched.
Yeah, I mean, I was in traffic today I feel like I'm always in traffic now, but I was thinking about Waze, which is a Google owned product. I was like, okay, well, the way Waze works is cars kind of self-report when they see things, accidents, police cars. I was like, oh, there's so many ways to make this better. Like you could get toll data, you can get like aerial footage, you could get speed cameras, you could get cars that are connected. There's like a way to improve the overall accuracy of traffic and routes. But then I was like, wait, where would all of that data go obviously with quantum computing, it would be able to be processed. But who do I trust with that?
Well, the answer is you don't trust anybody with that because, particularly if their business model is advertising based, then, you're not the customer, you're the target.
Yeah. Maybe that's the key. If it's not advertising, like a subscription, in which case do I buy into that? I actually, a subscription model and healthcare being one of them, like Amazon is making moves in this space, so is Apple. I feel more comfortable with a subscription model.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, Apple's making a big bet, which is that, they're, at the same time, and by the way, Amazon is on both sides of that because I don't know about you, but like I find now that when I go to Amazon to buy something, there's at least a page of things that get ahead of the line before popularity or price, which are paid ads that look like search results where people are basically paying to be at the front of the line. So if you type in, that you want, new light bulbs for your bathroom vanity, which at some point I will install and need light bulbs for, there are like there's like a page and a half of bulbs that aren't necessarily the best or the cheapest, but they've paid to get, and I have to remind myself of that.
Yeah.
The ad business for Amazon has become enormous, almost
Right.
overnight.
Yeah. So wait, the setback for quantum computing, do you think it's really a setback in that article?
I didn't understand it.
My takeaway was like, oh, there was a paper that people like it sort of was touted as being important, significant. And then when the data sources were revealed, there were inconsistencies and it showed some manipulation. And so it's kind of being challenged.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the questions about tech and AI in particular is, do you believe everything's inevitable and so that every step is a step forward toward an inevitable outcome? Or there's an argument in the AI community that every step is the same step and that we've been making the same step, step forward, one step back for the last 20 years, and that it hasn't actually gotten any closer to being genuinely intelligent, just faster search and more, kind of, you know, um, you know, this is the debate about whether or not, the chess computer, Deep Blue, is actually AI or just incredibly, there's a set of rules. A computer can run those rules way faster than a human can.
Right.
I don't know. But quantum computing, it seems to me, among other things, it's chips get faster, memory gets cheaper. Those are technical improvements that make computing faster.
And so, okay, if you had to say like why this makes you excited and this is a good thing, what's like your one sentence summary? Besides faster.
So this is going to be the wrong answer, but we're sitting here after a week of the Democrats arguing, 48-2 amongst themselves with two holdouts to do this great big social infrastructure, multi-billion-dollar, play that will speed up, among other things, changes in the way we treat the environment, electric cars, computing, broadband access, education, childcare. I'm an optimist, and so I'm reasonably confident that, they will somehow or another get it done. The crazy videos, of what's his name's boat. What's the pseudo Democrat who's been standing in the way of everything? Doesn't matter. Anyway, I mean,
So your
I think
point is we have a lot of important work to get done, and anything that makes things faster allows us to take advantage of that.
Yeah, but I'm going to be just slightly more optimistic than that. I mean, as much as things are zig and zag, I think a connected world in which we have more visibility and we share more information and we have diverse, distributed workforces, I think that's a good thing toward civilization.
I can buy into that. I just want to see like some, if we're going to go faster, what are like the speed bumps, checks and balances, and control, or at least perceived control, maybe, that we can preserve along the way.
Well, it's not going to be government, right?
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look likely.
I think the answer is it's about consumer control of data is the answer.
But you would need the government to pass legislation that gives us those rights.
Not necessarily. That could be a technology. I mean, Apple is already doing that, right? Apple is saying you don't have to share data with apps if you don't want to.
It's true, but Apple is like more an exception than the rule in terms of its stance on privacy.
It's also the biggest company in the world.
Yeah, we need a few more.
I mean, I think if someone would give me an app that I could load onto all my machines and all my devices that said, here are the rules under which I'm willing to share data.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an app that I would pay for.
Okay.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you have such an app, text me and I will install it. And with that, we are once again out of time.
All right. Until next week.
See ya.